Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is mimic. Let's take a moment to look at some definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you're likely to hear mimic used is to mean to imitate a person's actions or their words. Now, imitate might be a new word for you, so think of copy, right? So act in a similar way, use the same words, or try and make your voice sound like another. A second and sort of related way that we can use the verb mimic is again, we're imitating someone's actions or words, but we're doing it in order to either entertain, so maybe to make someone laugh for comedy, or it's being done to ridicule, to make fun of someone. A third way you might hear mimic used is to mean to resemble or imitate another animal or plant in order to keep predators away. So, this third definition is more commonly used in biology, where certain animals or plants are studied and kind of examined how they try and copy themselves in order to protect themselves. A fourth way you might hear mimic used is to mean to produce the same effects as another substance. So, this might be used if we're comparing two different types of medications, right? Does one produce the same effects as another? Does it mimic it? And a fifth way you might hear mimic used is to mean to show symptoms that are deceptively similar to those of another disease. So again, it's where two things look the same, but they're not, is the idea here. You should know that mimic is a regular verb. But our progressive and past tense and participle forms here are going to have an important spelling change. So before we add the ing, we're going to add a K. And this is a bit to sort of help us know that we haven't dropped an E before adding ing. I think that that's what sort of motivates this spelling change. So we're keeping that K sound at the end of this verb. So I add a K, then I add ing to form mimicking. The past tense and participle forms are going to follow a similar structure. We're adding a K, then red. Okay? Our base verb, mimic, as I said, ends with this K sound. So our past tense ending is going to make a T sound. Mimicked, mimicked. Okay. Now, you'll be happy to know there are no additional phrasal verbs that we need to study that alter the meaning of this particular verb. So that's going to allow us to focus on practicing our verb of the day and a couple different verb tenses. Today, we're going to practice the simple present and the present perfect progressive. Let's start with the simple present. You might remember we use this verb tense to talk about habit or routine. It's also very common to use when we're discussing facts. Okay? And the thing we need to pay attention to in the affirmative is our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, then we're just going to use the base verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, then we need to add an S to the end of this verb. You can see that in my example sentence here. COVID-19 mimics just about everything from colds to the flu. So this sentence ties back to the fifth definition of the verb we looked at earlier. So the symptoms many times look the same as symptoms you might experience if you had the cold or had a cold or the flu, and unfortunately many other illnesses as well. Now, if we want to make a negative sentence in the simple present, again, we need to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, our structure is going to be do not, and then the base verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, our structure will be does not, and then the base verb. So notice I'm not adding an S to the end of the verb here in the negative. You can see this in my example. After extensive research, scientists determined that the orchid mantis doesn't mimic an orchid after all. Okay? So this sentence is going back to our third definition of the verb where an animal or and I should just say animal here because that's our sentence. An animal is not trying to copy itself in order to keep itself safe from predators. And there was a long belief for many years that this particular animal did try and copy itself to blend in and save itself from predators. But I think 6 or 7 years ago, research scientists determined that's not how this particular thing evolved. Next, let's take a look at how we make a yes or no question in the simple present. To do this, we're going to start with do or does, whichever form matches our subject, and the subject comes next, and then we're going to have the base verb. So again, notice in my yes or no question, I'm not adding an S to the end of the verb. I'm only doing that in the affirmative when my subject is he, she, or it. So let's take a look at our example question. Does the child always mimic her teacher? Right? So this is going back to that first definition, likely kind of trying to imitate maybe her words, her actions, etc. Now let's take some time to look at using the verb mimic in the present perfect progressive. We use this verb tense to talk about an action that started in the past and continues into the present. Sometimes in textbooks or other teachers might call this the present perfect continuous. They mean the same thing. I like saying present perfect progressive because the 3 P's help me remember that I need 3 parts to make this verb tense in the affirmative. So I'm again paying attention to my subject. If my subject is I, you, we, or they, I'm going to use have. But if my subject is he, she, or it, I'll use has. Then I'm going to use the participle been, B-E-E-N, and then I'm using that ing form of the verb. Let's look at an example. Children and adults have been mimicking Cristiano Ronaldo's Sioux celebration. If you're a big soccer fan, you've probably seen this over the last few months. And if not, I'll put a link below this video to others so you can kind of understand what I'm referencing here. But again, this idea they are imitating, they're copying this particular celebration. Now, if you want to make a negative present perfect progressive sentence, we're going to insert not between our have and has, or have or has, and then our participle been. So here's an example. He hasn't been mimicking what he sees on TikTok. And if you're a parent that has a child or a teen that's frequently on that social media platform, you might say, phew, I'm so glad they're not copying, they're not imitating what they're seeing there. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question. To do this, we're going to start with have or has, whichever form matches our subject. Subject comes next. And then we've got our participle been and the ing form of the verb. Here's another example. Has the country been mimicking the anti-democratic behavior of others? I've seen sentences sort of phrased this way as various policies are just discussed and implemented in a variety of other countries. So again, this idea of imitate or copy. Now let's take a moment to look at some words that are related to our verb mimic. And the first word we're going to look at is the noun form of the same word, so same spelling, same pronunciation. When I use now the noun mimic, I'm referring to a person who is skilled in imitating the voice, maybe the gestures or the expression of another person, usually noting that it's being done in an entertaining way. Here's an example. Their child has become quite the mimic. So maybe this child is repeating things her parents or his parents say, do, or the way they express themselves. The word mimic can also be used as an adjective. And when we're doing that, we're noting that this thing that we're describing is imitative of something else. Here's an example of the adjective mimic used in a sentence. Social media can have a mimic effect across great distances and create shock and reduce people's confidence. Okay, so again, that idea of copying others here. The last word we're going to look at today is the noun mimicry. A couple different ways that this noun could be used. The first would be the action or art of imitating someone or something. And again, kind of connects back to this idea of we might try and sound like or express ourselves in a way that's similar to another person in order to entertain others, or maybe to make fun or ridicule that particular person. So, an example of this in a sentence might be, she donned a wig and began to sing with a teasing mimicry. Okay, so here, this idea, put on a wig, maybe to make herself look like someone else, and then began to imitate them. A second way you'll hear the noun mimicry used is connected back into the field of biology. So, if you go on to take advanced courses in biology, you might see this word used. And when it is, it's referring to the close external, so on the outside, resemblance of an animal or plant to another animal or plant or some other object. So, an example of this, mimicry is common across the animal kingdom. So, meaning many animals will try and make themselves look like either another animal or maybe a plant. Again, with that idea of they're avoiding predators, trying to keep themselves safe and alive. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.